All right, here we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome to what is going to be a really fantastic and practical and wonderful webinar on AI. But before we do that, let's just get introductions out of the way. Like we always do, I'm Chris Albrecht here with OpenWater, and I am so thrilled to be hosting Hugo Bowne-Anderson, an independent data and AI consultant with extensive experience in the tech industry. He is the host of Vanishing Gradients and High Signal podcast, exploring developments in data science and AI. Hugo has also served as the head developer relations at Outerbounds and held roles at Coiled and DataCamp, where his work in data science education reached over 3 million learners. He has taught at Yale University, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, and conferences like SciPy and PyCon, and is a passionate advocate for democratizing data skills and open source tools. Not only that, he's contacting us from the future because he is down under. So he is literally tomorrow speaking to us, giving us not only the skinny on what's happening in the future, but also on AI. I've talked a lot. Hugo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I can let you know it is Thursday morning, 9 a.m. And what I can tell you is the future is bright and beautiful, Chris.
Well, you're obviously not where I am, where it is dumping snow right now. So
are you on the East Coast? Remind me.
I'm on the West Coast.
West
Coast. In the Pacific Northwest, we are.
Oh, of course. We discussed the wonderful rainforesty nature and the David Lynch Twin Peaks connection as well. May he rest in peace.
R.I.P. So Hugo, with that introduction, today we're going to talk about, innovative ways to use ChatGPT. And you've got some slides you want to walk us through real quick. This might just be me handing it off to you in total. But let's set the stage a little bit. Why are we talking about this right now? What is it about ChatGPT? What do you see people doing every day that you're like, hey, you know what? You can do this kind of stuff with.
Yeah. So I think, in fact, I hesitate to use the term public service announcement, but there's so much mystification in the space and lack of robust knowledge that I think it's worthwhile stepping back and talking about what the affordances and capabilities of generative AI systems and products are, and what they're not good for as well. So I do want to share one study, and in all honesty, I don't want to over-index on this study. My background's in scientific research, right? So the reproducibility of such things may be challenging, but this is something I've seen everywhere as well. So Upwork did a study that employee workloads have been rising despite increased C-suite investment in AI. So data has revealed last year that 96% of C-suite leaders expect AI to boost worker productivity, but 70% of employees report AI has increased their workload. So this is one aspect of the systems we're talking about that I think we really need to reckon with. And in all honesty, AI can be used to achieve lots of different things. And I think products like ChatGPT, a lot of people think maybe you can only chat with them and not actually achieve serious business goals. So I want to kind of open a conversation around what they're capable of. For a bit more context, most of my work is helping people build and ship AI-powered, data-powered, and ML-powered products, and teaching people how to do so as well. So it's on the technical side. But what I've seen happen is the people I consult with, I've kind of, floated up through their organizations to have conversations with leadership to really manage expectations. So when you and I started chatting, and we realized there was, an impedance mismatch of sorts between what these things are capable of, what people think they're capable of, and the practical techniques to get the work out of them, which we have to do sometimes. We found it super exciting to have a conversation like this. So that's Excellent. The context.
Great.
Now, I do want to do a little demo first. I'm not sure if this will work but we'll see. What I'm going to do, Chris, is a lot of people will type something into ChatGPT. You can notice I've pulled up, can you see the desktop app here?
Yeah.
So yes. What I want you to do is we're going to build a marketing campaign together. Okay. So could you tell me, just make up a product that we can build a marketing campaign for?
Well, let's just do OpenWater. Can we do that?
Fantastic. Yeah, so could you give me just a one-liner, or so I can tell? ChatGPT probably knows. Okay, let me try this. We're just going to see. Hey, ChatGPT, I'm here with Chris Albrecht from OpenWater. I'm a marketing advisor, and I want to help him come up with a new novel marketing campaign. Could you give me a comprehensive marketing campaign and then give me a couple of images to go with it? And this is just in the ideation phase, okay? We're not committing to anything yet, ChatGPT, but that's the role I want you to adopt, helping me as a marketing advisor. And you've advised a lot of companies and organizations, and you're the best in the world at this. So you'll notice I did several.
I noticed you kind of sucked up to ChatGPT there.
Well, I sucked up to it, and I also did what was called what we call role engineering. So I'm actually giving it a role. I'm telling it what its duties are and what its background is. So you can say to ChatGPT, "Speak like a pirate," but you can also say, "You're a marketing expert," and then it adopts that role. So let's see.
The only thing I will caution is that there are a lot of open waters, and so I don't know if we need to specify it around like OpenWater.group.
That's why I mentioned your name, Chris Albrecht, and or Albrecht. I'm sorry, and yeah, so, so it may not have got the correct open water, but that's fine, and we would correct it on that, and maybe I will. We see marketing campaign concept, competitive space. So it's actually making up a few things. It's kind of hedging, right? It didn't, and this is an issue. You may notice it didn't ask me a question, and we'll get to the importance of this. So it's okay. Key messages: awards, grants, applications should be seamless. Unlock efficiency, fairness, and impact with open water. The open water challenge: gamify and engage the audience. Are you running on outdated workflows? Take the open water challenge to find out. Okay, so now it's asking me, now we're just going to assume that we've got the correct open water for, actually, no, let's try to correct it. How would you correct it to say, would you give it the URL or?
I would probably give it the URL.
Okay, great. And we're going to see if it's going to do web search now. So you've actually got the incorrect open water here, ChatGPT. That's cool. It happens. The URL is openwater.org, is it, Chris?
No, OpenWater.group.
Pardon me. It's OpenWater.group, ChatGPT. That's OpenWater.group. Please search the internet and go to that website and then construct the marketing campaign for me.
All right.
Okay. So after reviewing OpenWater.group's website, now I'm going to verify that it's actually okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So because it may make a mistake there as well. I understand OpenWater is a curated members-only platform that builds a community of accomplished professionals to create new economic opportunities. Campaign concept: wisdom meets opportunity. Position OpenWater as the premier network where seasoned professionals can leverage their experience to access new opportunities and drive innovation. Key message: your experience is invaluable. Join OpenWater to connect with like-minded professionals and unlock new avenues for success. I'll say one thing: ChatGPT will often engage in generic marketing words like unlock, which then we want to correct, and that type of stuff potentially. But you can see it's given campaign components for a video series, an interactive webinar, social media campaign, blog series, visual elements, and now ChatGPT, could you create one or two example visual elements for me using your text to image model? And it should do this in app. So we'll see if this works. Creating image.
There it is. And while we're waiting, I want to remind people that you can submit questions using the Q&A button down below. Oh, look at, there he goes. Wow. All right.
Incredible. So this is a first approximation and maybe something you wouldn't necessarily want to use, but the point is that you can really ideate with these things on images, campaigns, all of these different types of things. Now, there are several things I want to point out. First is, and a lot of people don't know this, you can get ChatGPT to search the internet, and I actually got it to do that there, right? You can talk to it. So these are called multimodal models, and modes are just like voice, text. So it's not just text to text, it's voice to text. We also have text to image, as we've seen there. And this is the first visual representation of the network of wisdom concept. You'll also note, and this is incredibly important, a lot of people, I think you ask ChatGPT a question and accept it if it's right, and if you think it's wrong, don't. What you've seen here is an iterative process of working with a generative AI system where we've had an initial concept, and in fact, it made up stuff, didn't it, Chris? It pretended like open water was a thing it knew. and got it totally wrong. It did not ask for clarification. It did not express uncertainty. These are incredibly important points. So with and I do, not only do I welcome questions in the chat, if anybody wants to share what their interest is, why they're here, and whether they've even seen that ChatGPT can be leveraged for these types of things, I'd be super interested, because one of my one of my true passions is helping people in this space, and also finding out what people can do. So I'm going to kind of give a bunch of things that you can do with ChatGPT, and you may not know about, and then I'd love for us to chat about them, Chris. So the first one is the many modes of AI. And I actually created a video of me creating an ad campaign in case that demo didn't work. But the point here is that we have voice, we have images, we have text. You can use Sora in OpenAI to create videos now. So if people haven't heard of Sora, it's a video generation model. It's text to video. So all of these things are possible in ChatGPT. You can also do summarization. And in fact, so I recorded a podcast with my friend Chris Wiggins, who he's chief data scientist at the New York Times. And in fact, Chris, it's Chris Wiggins who originally introduced me to Dale Kim, who was Chris's first hire at the New York Times, who's been in one of these sessions recently. Yeah. But you can see what I've done here is I ask, can I upload a transcript? And I upload a transcript, and then it gives me a summary. And this is an incredible affordance of ChatGPT to be able to synthesize and condense in information. Now, on top of that, a summary in app isn't always the most useful thing for me. I want it as a document. And what I can do is get ChatGPT to give me the summary as a PDF. Now, once again, we need to iterate with these systems, right? You can see it said analyzing, and then it said error analyzing. There's an encoding issue due to special characters. Then another due to, pardon me, missed that. Then another encoding issue due to this arrow symbol. And then it corrected itself, and it gave me the podcast summary as a PDF that then I can share with colleagues, or, take wherever I want. You'll notice that I pasted the transcript into the chat here. You can also upload PDFs. And this is a conversation I had. I was being particularly Australian that day, saying, g'day, if I give you a PDF, can you summarize it for me? So it will summarize PDFs for you as well. As we've already seen, you can access the internet also. So I got it to access the internet. I gave it the URL here, as I gave it OpenWater.group as well. But what you can also get it to do is do web crawls. So I asked it, could it check out some of Paul Graham's essays on his blog? And it searched 2 sites and gave me the top 5. I've only printed the 4 here. Then I've asked, can you export it as a PDF? And it's done it for me as well. It will also export spreadsheets, Word docs, all of these types of things. What you can also do is, if you're searching the internet and doing web crawls, do market research and or SWOT analyses, right? So I made up that I wanted to start a business that provides an AI tutor for every math student in the world. Can you help me with competitive analysis and market research? And I actually want to show you this conversation. And this is another thing, you can share conversations from ChatGPT with other people. So it gave me a competitive analysis. And then I said, and it identified some direct competitors. And then I said, let's now have a competitor analysis of the direct competitors you've identified. Told me Photomath, Khan Academy, of course, Socratic by Google, and so on. And then that was too much information for me. So I said, can you just provide it in a table? And so it provided it in a table for me. And then I was able to export that as table as a spreadsheet to share with colleagues. Now, those were the top 7 that I wanted to share. There are others, but something wacky happened in the past couple of days, Chris. So we'll talk about DeepSeek in a second, because I clearly wouldn't be doing my job if we didn't discuss it briefly. But 3 days ago, OpenAI introduced a product called Deep Research, okay? So this essentially will do highly sophisticated research for you. You can see the SWOT analyses and market analyses I've done, and we'll get to the fact that you really need to check your the references it's providing there. But what deep research does is it actually does a far more sophisticated and deeper level of research, and I want to show you the types of things it does. So first, I said conduct an in-depth analyses of emerging AI startups and breakthroughs technologies in the last 12 months. Focus on traction, academic breakthroughs, industry adoption. One thing we'll get to is you can see how specific and precise and clear I'm being as well. When you're speaking with computers in natural language, the more precise you can be, the better. And you can see now it's actually telling me how it's thinking. It's saying I'm identifying AI startups in generative AI as opposed to just giving me an answer. Searching, reading news.crunchbase.com, reading more from news.crunchbase.com. So let me actually just, do I want to take us to this conversation? No, I won't for the time being. But what I do want to say is that the types of breakthroughs we're seeing with these new models and new techniques is absolutely fascinating. And the ability to do serious in-depth research is accelerating.
I got a couple of questions from the audience.
Oh, yeah.
If I might. So
please, yeah, I'd love.
I just want to sneak these in here real quick before we get too far down the road, which is, so we have one question from that said, I heard a fellow speaker say that she built an image generator in ChatGPT and she uploads her talks and it generates images automatically that she can use in her slides. She does not have to come up with any prompts. I would love to do something like that, but have no idea how to begin. And any idea what she meant by built-in image generator?
Yeah, so what I presume, it could mean several things, but what I presume, pardon me, what I presume she meant was actually, sure what's happening there. I presume she would have been referring to creating a custom GPT, which you may have heard of, which is a way to customize ChatGPT for your particular use cases. I'm not certain that's what she meant, but that's what I think. And this actually responds to another question we have here as well. My spidey sense tingles when I hear she does not have to come up with any prompts. How does she communicate to the system if she's not prompting them? That's my question. Because even if you automate a lot of things, you still need to tell it to do something, right?
Well, I wonder if, and I'm sort of speculating here, which is that, you upload your slides and then you say, hey, create images for each slide based on what's in there. And that might be, I don't know, that could be the only prompt or something, but that anyway.
Yeah.
So
and so you're absolutely right. But that I would say in that case, there's still a prompt.
Right. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
But the point is, like, if she wanted to replicate that, is there a way for her to replicate that, like being able to upload a deck and have it just create images for it?
Yeah. So the way I would approach that is doing a custom GPT. So let me just.
And thank you for the question. You can submit more using the Q&A button at the bottom while we are getting this next thing set up.
So I won't actually do this now because it may take a bit too long. But what creating custom versions of ChatGPT allows you to give them instructions such as, you're going to be a system where I upload a slide deck and it does, and this is what you do essentially. Now, I do most of that still in ChatGPT myself because I find it more straightforward and easier to do it there. But yes, you can create custom GPTs to do that.
Got it. And which, gets us to our next question, which is, how important is it important to create your own GPTs? It seems like a helpful way to continue to build a project over time.
I think at the moment it absolutely is. But something that we're seeing more and more of is the release of products. So even OpenAI has a product which is only available in the US currently. Sorry, my external keyboard is playing up. A couple of weeks ago, they introduced something called Operator, which allows you to do a lot of browsing and it will point and click for you and those types of things. So you may need to build less of your custom workflows when OpenAI is creating things where you just have to give it a sentence or two to do what you want to do.
Okay. And we got another question. I know you have some other stuff you want to show us.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we have this
but I'm here.
question
I'm here to answer questions as well.
Okay,
Whatever
great. So you heard him. Unload. We want to know, can you speak to the new O3 mini family and how it is different to 4.0?
So I can. What I want to say though first is that I'm actually quite frustrated with the product at the moment, because even for technical people, look at the type of models I have access to. GPT 4.0 is great for most tasks, uses advanced reasoning. Firstly, what's the difference between these two? I don't even find these things that fast at advanced reasoning, great at coding and logic, best at reasoning. What do I choose for which one, right? So I appreciate the question, because it's trying to disambiguate a lot of things here. In all honesty, O3 Mini, one of the reasons I use it is because it's fast and it is relatively good reasoning. And Mariana has said exactly. Yeah, I hesitate to say this, but it's actually very important to recognize in this space, these products are not, there's an issue with user experience and product design. And I know we're jumping around a bit, but I actually posted 2 things on LinkedIn yesterday that I do want to share because they're incredibly relevant. The first is, actually, let me just share one of them. So I paid $200 for a month of ChatGPT Plus, right? And the first time I tried to use it, and I fixed this now, look at this failed to play message that I just got as an error several times. And there was no way to contact ChatGPT, OpenAI about it, or the product team. And so there are serious product concerns. The other one I just wanted to share is, and excuse me for lambasting OpenAI online, but I think they're big enough to deal with it. And I think this is because of the Apple Store. But I went to upgrade from paying $20 a month to $200 a month for ChatGPT Plus, and they told me it looks like you have an active mobile subscription. Switch to your mobile app to upgrade. And the amount of friction they introduced in the process of me trying to pay them 10x the monthly fee, I think I also found challenging. All this is to say that I do think we have a serious, they're moving incredibly fast. They're breaking a lot of things, as we know this space is notorious for. And part of that is not having robust, principled product design. So we don't actually, it's difficult to navigate. And I think that's totally to Mariana's point. So, but the short story is O3 Mini is pretty good at reasoning capabilities, and it's fast as well. So you may have noticed that when we did the marketing campaign or ad campaign for OpenWater, Chris, that it gave a streaming response, because you and I were talking. It wasn't a big deal, but it took a while to print stuff to console, right? And when I'm rapidly iterating with a product in order to get out results, that speed can that latency can actually get me out of my flow state with the work I'm doing. So O3 Mini is actually quite good in terms of response time as well.
So we have a question here. So
it's a great
you're
question.
Obviously paying for access to these things. For most people, do they need to pay for access? And, you know, where for the average person who's trying to do stuff for, let's just say, their work, is the free version fine, or should they upgrade? Now, everybody else we've ever had on this show said you should absolutely pay for the $20 a month for the advanced features. But I'm just wondering if you have a thought on that.
I definitely do. And so I'll answer that in a question, but sorry, in a second. But Chris, I'm interested either from you or people in the room. How do you figure out whether a product's good or whether you want to use it?
The results I get and how often I use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another aspect of these systems, because they're non-deterministic, so you'll give it the same prompt several times and give different responses. I actually think one of the most important things in this space at the moment is building trust with these systems and seeing the utility, right? And the only way we can do that is by using them over and over again, and seeing if they're useful for us. It's very challenging that the space is changing so rapidly. All that's to say is, if you find that the unpaid version of ChatGPT useful, I'd encourage you to use that and maybe try another one for a month or two. So to be clear, I've only paid, and if there are releases that are important to you as well. So for example, the reason I decided to pay $200 a month is pretty wild, given GPT Pro, it was $20 a month, right? So the reason I decided is because they introduced a product called Deep Research, that I really wanted to try. That's what justified it, for me. Having said that, if you're getting enough out of the free version, maybe try Pro for a month or two and compare them. I wouldn't necessarily say. I also don't want you to end up like with the Netflix, Disney, Hulu, HBO Go, like streaming services we're just like slammed across now. Like we've all got our portfolio of streaming services, and it's kind of the same. Like, do I subscribe to Claude or do I subscribe to ChatGPT? I subscribe to all of them, and that's because I need to for my job, and also I have extreme curiosity because of the nature of my work. But I would suggest you subscribe to the one or two, see how it works for you, try a couple of others. I know we're dancing around a bit here. The other thing that's relevant, like all of this, you need to play around with them, and we really need to make the hours in the day to do it. We're all working more than full-time jobs, right? So how do we make the space and time for this if the ROI isn't immediate? I think justifying that we're actually moving into, there's almost like a phase change in our civilization in terms of, my grandfather went and did the same job every day, right? My father did the same, needed to learn a bit more on the job. But today, arguably, we should all be spending 1 or 2 days a week learning about technological innovation in order to keep up with it. So I'm sorry, that was a long-winded, multifaceted answer.
Well, but that actually leads to our next question, which is, when do you use Claude versus ChatGPT versus Gemini versus Mistral versus DeepSeek, etc.? Like, what have you found?
So when I'm using an app as opposed to when I'm coding, when I'm coding, I love Gemini and Mistral as models, to be honest. But I don't use them a lot for chat interfaces. And it comes down to personal preferences. So I use Claude most of the time, but when I'm feeling lazy, i.e., I don't want to type, I use ChatGPT because I can speak to it like you just saw me do. Whereas I can't speak to Claude as easily. I can using like my Apple systems microphone, like text to speech to text thing, but that isn't as accurate as OpenAI. So I think that once again it comes down to personal preference. But I have a slight preference for Claude. The reason I have a slight preference for Claude is it has a more of a sense of humor, and I get it more in that sense. And I know that's a weird thing to say. And also it doesn't write as much. We saw, like, I can't even remember what the word was, but ChatGPT always talks about like insights and like it's marketing slop a lot of the time, right? And we actually have a term for that now, AI slop, which is when it generates generic marketing copy. So Claude just has a bit more nuanced use of language, which I like. So that's my calculus. But I actually think you all should take the time to play around with, not should, I'm sorry. But in order to make these decisions, I can tell you my heuristics and my decisions, but yours will be different.
Got it. So we're going to move on to something that's also, this is less on the technical side, but more on the, I don't know, the existential side, which is like on building trust. How do you feel about privacy and what concerns should we have? And that's going to dovetail into the follow-up question, which is, do you own what ChatGPT creates? Now, I know I threw a lot in there at once, sort of in different topics, but they're all sort of the same thing, right? Like in terms of your data that you're handing over, what concerns would you have? And then also just ownership of what you create.
Yeah, these are very important questions. I'll answer the first on a business level model. I'm sorry, on a business model level. So if you work in finance or healthcare, if you're HIPAA compliant, you should. It is illegal for you to send your work data to ChatGPT. Let's be very clear about that, right? And it's illegal for very important reasons. So you can't do that. So what do you do then? So as a business leader, you perhaps need to set up or have your technical infrastructure team and platform infrastructure team set up a self-hosted model. And you can use Mistral models. You can use the Llama family model, which is open weight models from Meta, in order to do that. And this will be a huge part of the future. I do appreciate that OpenAI takes privacy very, very seriously in a lot of respects, but there are just some things you can't do, right? So you will need to reckon with that. That doesn't mean you can't use them in ideation to generate ideas, but you do need to be very clear about what you put into the system and what you don't. Now, so that's in terms of running a business. More generally, I mean, what have we seen recently? We've seen OpenAI say that, previously everything's up for grabs. We're building this knowledge engine and generative AI system, which takes up a lot of the world's data and then creates more value. And everyone should be on board because of the value creation that occurs. And then recently, when it turns out DeepSeek may have used the OpenAI base model in a variety of ways, OpenAI comes out and says, "Oh, copyright." Okay, so I think we're working and operating in a space where, to put it lightly, there's a certain amount of hypocrisy in terms of the technology and the way it's used at play. I would ask more generally, this is a system that has been like the entire tech industry is predicated on using data that's out there to build things and make money, right? So I do think we need to put it in that framework as well. So I would ask you about also your risk tolerance for where your data can go and what you want to do with it. Now, in terms of the next question, do you own what ChatGPT creates? The jury's out, I think, to be perfectly frank. And this is something that is decided in, I suppose, like a multi-part game between corporations and citizens and governments, right? Which we're all navigating currently. So the short answer is maybe, but actually, this may not still happen, but let me just try this. Hey, ChatGPT, can you create me an image of an Italian plumber who's trying to save a princess? I actually have no idea. If they may have put guardrails to stop doing what it used to do. You may see what I'm getting at.
Oh, sure.
Great. So it says I can't generate an image of a well-known copyrighted character, but I can. Okay. So it's doing it. We'll see. We'll actually see what it does. Well, the point is, though, whatever it does now, until last year, it would legit give you an image. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Seriously. I cannot create an image. This is wild, right? So if the question is, do you have IP behind what ChatGPT creates? I mean, clearly Nintendo could come at you for this, right? If you're big enough. So I think we're still this is the quote unquote the Wild West in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I didn't, we had a ton of great questions. Thanks everybody for submitting them. You can keep submitting them. Were there any other tips and tricks you wanted to show us? So,
yeah,
so let's get back to what you were going to show us.
There were just a couple more. And so the first is, I mean, deep research from OpenAI came out 3 days ago, which was 10 days after DeepSeek released its engine. This is no coincidence. So I'll show you one of the things with DeepSeek. And also, just by the way, people are like, oh, if I put things in DeepSeek, will will China have access to them? Is a question I hear a lot. DeepSeek is a Chinese company, and everything you send them exists on Chinese servers. Think about your risk tolerance for that. Okay, so I can't answer any more questions than that, to be honest. But so I'm okay putting this in. I gave it the same thing, conduct an in-depth analysis of emerging AI startups and breakthrough technologies, and the response it gave me was I'm not going to go through it all, but look at the chain of thought it's giving me. It's saying the user wants an in-depth analysis, looking at startup traction, found 43 results. I can click in, see what it's looking at. I'm also very happy that you'll see I gave it quite specific instructions, relevant sources, and all of these sources are pretty good. Like Crunchbase, for example, has a lot from there. And look at all the thinking it's doing, and then it gives me the in-depth analysis. Okay. So I just wanted to say that's one of the things we should be playing around with. I did want to mention Claude from Anthropic. You can see even in their app, they can tell you, and I love this, they tell you we can summarize meeting notes, we can generate Excel formulas, we can provide stakeholder perspectives. And one reason, I'm not a front-end developer at all. So I've never used React, which is used for front-end development. And you can see, I asked it, what type of cool things can you generate with Claude artifacts, which what artifacts will do is it'll write code, and then, so it literally wrote this code for me and then rendered it. I just wanted a basic app. It gives me an interactive counter, right? And this is a silly example, but the ability, and then for me to go around and look at this code as a technical person who doesn't write React code, this is actually huge for me. And then I said, what are some other things you can create? And it said, how about an interactive analytics dashboard? And it created an example in 30 seconds for me of this, and also gave me the code. You could put your own data in there as well to, of course, once again, you may not want to send proprietary data to Anthropic servers, but having said that, if you've got stuff that that isn't as private, you can do that. Now, what I wanted to wrap up on before we dive deeper into chat and questions, I've kind of showed you all a lot of different affordances, but there are several things that came up which make me uncomfortable. Okay. So I want to talk a bit about just how to work with AI sensibly. So you want to be clear and specific and precise. As I said, give it as much information as you would a junior intern. At the moment, I would really treat it like that in terms of the information you give to it. For example, if you ask it to summarize a 60-page PDF, it may return with 2,000 words. So in that case, you should specify how long you want the summary to be. We may just assume a summary is 5 bullet points. Tell it 5 bullet points. Tell it 300 words and see what it does. Another thing, have conversations to get results, just like you would with an intern. Very rarely will you work with an intern and you say something and they go and do it correctly, right? So let's remember that. Now, I'm going to get back to 3 in a second. 4, if you're getting it to draft emails for you or something like that, provide a few positive examples, and maybe even a negative example. Usually it works pretty well with positive, but or if you're generating marketing copy, say, hey, here are 3 examples of how our company speaks about itself. Give it the examples and it will do significantly better. The final thing is use AI to scale workflows, not just individual chats. So instead of saying, generate me a single email, say, generate me an email and generate me an email template as well, that then you can circulate with your team, store in a wiki or whatever it is, right? Now, the use system prompts to guide AI's roles. You astutely picked up that I told it you're a marketing expert. Chris, you can also do this in what are called system prompts. So if you go into ChatGPT and go into preferences, you can say, what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? You can also say, how would you like it to respond? So for example, you could say, I run a SaaS company, need strategic guidance on product positioning, competitive analysis, and internal decision-making. How would you like to respond? Act as a strategic advisor. I said marketing before, but here, strategic advisor with expertise in SaaS growth. Provide structured insights. highlight trade-offs and offer recommendations, keep responses concise and practical. Often ChatGPT can be very verbose. So these and I'm happy to circulate the slides with you afterwards, because I realize this is a significant amount to take in. Not only are there sensible things to do, there are significant gotchas. AI will make up facts. We call it hallucinating, okay? Now, we need to remember that these systems aren't merely information retrieval systems, they're language generators, right? So they will generate language and language and language without necessary regard for base truth or ground truth all the time. They're also horrible at admitting uncertainty. So what I want you to do is, if something is important, ask for a source and check it. When I asked for a summary of my conversation with Chris Wiggins, if I was going to put that online, I'd make sure that everything it says is correct based on what I recall of the conversation. It's also inconsistent. It can change its answer given the same prompt. It can overcorrect. And what I mean by that is, if I'm working with it on marketing copy and I say, be a bit more professional and do this, it will forget some of the things I've asked earlier and correct for what I've just said and not necessarily paid attention to the conversation we've had previously. And I don't know why this is the case, but I presume it's because of the way they weight conversation history. It also degrades in long chats. If your conversation is getting a bit silly and it's giving you some nonsense, consider starting the conversation again. It also has gaps. It forgets a lot, and it's horrible at math, which is hilarious, right? Because we would expect software to be good at math. But so one of the famous examples is ChatGPT has constantly found it difficult to count the number of R's in the word strawberry, and we don't even quite know why. But it's bad at math, and one of the reasons it's bad at math is because it's not software as expected. It's not deterministic, because essentially what it's doing is predicting the next words probabilistically. There is a probabilistic element to it. So what that means is that it won't always get the right answer from its training data. And it can also mislead. It's biased. It can sound right even when it's wrong. And one of the wackiest things is it will try to convince you it's right. So it's kind of this weird, like, people pleaser gaslighter sometimes as well. So I would encourage everyone to remember that. Now, my friend Jeremy Howard tweeted yesterday, and I do want to say, like, I'm showing stuff from LinkedIn and Twitter in the past day for very good reason. There's so much research and so much practice happening now that we're discovering things on a daily basis. And Jeremy wrote, wow, actual grown men are still doing the I asked LLM about it. So this guy asked DeepSeek multiple times and was told his data is not sent to China. And that's because an LLM these AI systems just don't have this information. Like, they actually don't know, so shouldn't be expected to answer questions like that, right? As Jeremy wrote here. I replied, I find this concerning. Some people are part of my proverbial French taking the piss, surely, but I feel like we need more PSAs about AIs, LLMs. We could have these things embedded in products as well. And that's one of the reasons I love coming and talking with people like you. And Simon Willison responded that this is ridiculous. And he's a big guy in the LLM space. Asking an AI system how to use it is such an obvious thing to do. We have 2+ years of evidence that people will do that now, and they still don't. And I just want to show you, I asked DeepSeek, what model are you? I did it today, and it said, hi, I'm DeepSeek. Great. I did it yesterday, and it said, I'm based on OpenAI's GPT-4 architecture. I did it a few days ago. I didn't take a screenshot, and it said, I am ChatGPT. I'm GPT-4o. And people are speculating the reason it responded that way is because it was trained after a lot of the AI content on the internet was already populated by conversations with ChatGPT, right? So we're already seeing the influx of model responses informing models in production. So I just wanted to make clear these several gotchas, which is very important to keep in mind, particularly when you're trying to build trust with these systems. So I'll leave it at that. And I did have thank you. And I'm really excited to chat with you, Chris, and everyone else about all of these topics now.
Well, that was a lot. That was great. Thank you, Hugo Bowne-Anderson, for being here today. We really appreciate it. From there down under. And like I said, people take a look at this, reach out to Hugo if you have any other questions. Hugo, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Absolutely. And I'd love to connect on LinkedIn or wherever. I'm on Twitter as well, the platform formerly known as Twitter. But we have a lot of these conversations on LinkedIn as well. So I'd love to know what you all are up to.
Excellent. Thank you, Hugo.
Thanks, Chris.